The person who once took you for granted will eventually return to the scene of the crime, but this time they won't recognize the man standing there. My friends, that's where this story begins. Not in the moment they left, not in the moment they chose someone else, but in the quiet hours life forced them to face themselves. This script isn't about the old version of you who begged for clarity, who tried to hold everything together, who blamed himself for love that wasn't handled with care. This is about the moment they come back, and why their commitment hits differently this time. Not because they suddenly found courage, but because you did. Now, hey folks, before we go any deeper, press that like button and subscribe so you stay with me. I promise you, what we're about to uncover will shift something heavy inside you. Stay close, stay tuned, stay present. All right, imagine this. You're standing in front of a house you once lived in. You remember every corner, every window, every creaking floorboard. But now, after months of rebuilding yourself, after learning hard truths you didn't want to learn, something inside you has changed. The house looks familiar, but you're not the same man who walked out of it. And here's the twist, the one who pushed you out, the one who left with confidence and certainty, is now quietly walking back up the driveway. Except this time, they don't walk in with the same ego. They knock. Life has a funny way of handing out lessons, my friends. It rarely teaches them when times are good. It waits until the illusion cracks, until the pretty lies lose their shine, until the distractions fade and loneliness starts sounding honest. They come back when they finally see the truth you saw months ago. They come back when their pride can no longer protect them from their regret. They come back when the person they thought was better stops being a fantasy and starts being reality, with all the flaws, the silence, the emotional distance, the misunderstandings, the confusion. Life always circles back. It just takes time. There's a quote I love. People don't change when they meet someone new. They change when life refuses to let them stay the same. And folks, that's exactly what happens before they return. Time pressures them. Consequences humble them. Silence forces them to see their own patterns. And most importantly, your absence becomes a mirror they can't escape. They don't miss you because you were perfect. They miss you because you were real. My friends, the old you would hear their name and crumble. The old you would forgive instantly. The old you would say, maybe this time will be different. But the man listening to this today, he has lived through the fire. He has rebuilt himself brick by brick. He doesn't react the same. He doesn't chase the same. He doesn't bleed for people who only show up when life breaks them. And that alone shocks them more than anything else. You broke your own pattern while they stayed trapped in theirs. That's why their return looks different. They don't walk back in with confidence now. They walk back in with caution, awareness, and a fear they never had before. The fear of losing you twice. They're not coming back to the old version of you. They're coming back to the man you became because of what they put you through. And trust me, that man demands a different level of respect, honesty, and commitment. So stay with me, because we're about to walk through why their comeback isn't a compliment. It's a consequence. Why their new commitment isn't an accident. It's an awakening. And why doesn't the final decision sit in their hands? It sits in yours. Take a deep breath, my friend. You've earned this clarity. You've earned this strength. You've earned this moment. Type, "I choose my worth" in the comments right now. Press like, hit subscribe, and let's keep going. Number 1, the return isn't random. It's a reckoning. Life doesn't bring people back to you by accident. It brings them back when running stops working. My friend, that sentence alone hits a little too close to home, doesn't it? Because deep down, you always felt that if they ever came back, it wouldn't be because they suddenly became wiser, healthier, or more emotionally available. No! They would come back because life finally cornered them with the very truth they avoided when they walked away from you. Imagine this for a moment. You're standing on a long, quiet road. Behind you is the place where everything fell apart. The heartbreak, the disappointment, the nights you weren't sure if you would ever feel normal again. And far ahead of you is the version of yourself you've been slowly growing into. Stronger, calmer, wiser. Now picture them somewhere in the middle of that road. They left running, almost celebrating, convinced they could escape accountability, convinced you were replaceable, convinced their next chapter would erase every trace of what they did to you. But the thing about running is this. Eventually, the road curves. Eventually, the landscape changes. Eventually, the runner gets tired, and when they do, the truth catches them from behind. That truth is why they return. But here's the part your mind wrestles with. You ask yourself, why now? Why after everything they put me through? Why after choosing someone else, ignoring me, acting like I never mattered? You question their timing. You question their motives. And if you're honest, a small part of you questions yourself. Do they really mean it this time? Am I being tested again? Will this break me if I'm wrong? These questions don't make you weak. They make you human. Because somewhere inside you, there was always a silent fear. A fear that if they did return, it wouldn't be for the right reasons. A fear that their comeback would be another cycle of emotional whiplash. A fear that your heart, no matter how much it healed, might still be vulnerable to the voice that once shattered it. But let me break one of the biggest lies right here. They didn't return because you were easy. They didn't return because you were waiting. They didn't return because you're an option. They returned because the truth they ran from finally blocked their path. They left thinking life would reward the escape. But life isn't fooled by temporary happiness, fresh excitement, or new faces. Life protects truth, and truth has a way of exposing everything that was hidden. They left you thinking you were the problem, that you were too emotional, too demanding, too invested, too honest, too much. But the moment they stepped into someone else's world, they discovered the same challenges they blamed on you. Waiting for them again. Different face, same pattern. Because when someone refuses to deal with their own wounds, every relationship becomes a battlefield they blame on everyone except themselves. That's where the reckoning begins. Life starts whispering to them in a language they can't ignore anymore. It shows them how they dismissed your effort. It shows them how they mishandled your heart. It shows them how they abandoned something real for something convenient. And slowly, reality pulls them back toward you, not in pride, but in humility, not in ego, but in realization, not for validation, but because what they lost finally makes sense in a way it never did when they still had access to you. But this is the part that's difficult for you, because their return doesn't just bring hope. It brings memory. It brings the sound of old arguments. It brings the fear of being hurt again. It brings the weight of everything you survived. Your heart remembers the pain, even when your mind understands the lesson. You start wondering if letting them speak is the same as letting them back into your life. You wonder if healing means reopening old doors. You wonder if you're strong enough to stand firm when their presence once made you weak. Let me tell you the truth. You are stronger now than you ever were when they left. You don't fear their return anymore. The fear is gone. You're not shaking this time. You're not begging for explanations. You're not drowning in overthinking. You're standing still while they're the ones trembling. Your silence has rewritten the entire dynamic. Your growth has intimidated their ego. Your distance has forced their clarity. What they didn't expect was this version of you. A version who no longer collapses at the sight of a familiar name. A version who doesn't fall for emotional crumbs. A version who knows his worth, not because they validate it, but because he validated it himself. So listen carefully. Their return is not a blessing. It is not a promise. It is not destiny bringing two people back together. It is a reckoning. It is the universe making them face what they ran from. It is life teaching them the lesson they refused to learn when you were offering it with love. What you do with this moment is up to you, but whatever you choose, choose from strength, not fear. Choose from clarity, not loneliness. Choose from growth, not nostalgia. Choose from the man you became, not the man you were. Type, "I choose truth" in the comments, my friend. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that when life brings someone back, it doesn't mean you're meant to fall, it means you're meant to rise. And stay with me. What comes next will make everything even clearer. Number 2. When absence becomes the mirror, they can't escape. Nothing exposes a person's truth faster than the silence of the one they took for granted. My friend, that line might feel like poetry, but it's not. It's reality. It's the quiet reality they never expected to face. Because when they left, they didn't believe your absence would ever matter. They believed you were the type who would always be there, always ready, always soft for them, always open, no matter how many times they closed the door in your face. They didn't leave thinking they were losing anything. They left believing they were upgrading. But folks, life always has a way of rebalancing the scales. And your absence? It wasn't an empty space. It became a mirror they couldn't dodge, a mirror that reflected everything they once blamed on you, back onto them. Imagine this. Picture a room they used to walk into where everything felt warm because you were in it. Your voice softened the air. Your understanding grounded the chaos in their mind. Your presence made the world feel less sharp. Now imagine that same room, but empty. No warmth, no reassurance, no softness, no safety net, just the echo of choices they made without thinking about the consequences. That's what your absence feels like to them. At first, they pretend it doesn't matter. They tell themselves, "I needed this. I can do better. I feel lighter without him," as if repeating a sentence often enough will turn it into truth. They distract themselves. New conversations, new energy, new faces, new routines, new excitement. All of it acting like a bandage over a wound they refuse to admit exists. But bandages fall off. Distractions fade. New faces get familiar. And familiar faces eventually reveal the truth they were trying to avoid. And that's when the silence starts talking. Not your silence. The silence of you no longer being accessible. Because let's be honest, my friend, your presence was doing a lot more emotional labor than they ever realized. You were the stability, you were the comfort, you were the emotional map they used to understand themselves. And the moment you stopped being available, the moment you stopped reacting, stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped begging, stopped trying to make them see the good in what the two of you had, that's the moment their inner world began to shift. Your silence started revealing the truth about them, and truth is loud. Suddenly the problems they thought were because of you start showing up with other people. Suddenly, the misunderstandings they blamed on you start happening somewhere else. Suddenly, the emotional chaos they projected onto you starts whispering in the back of their mind, maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was me. Your absence becomes a mirror they can't turn away from. See, folks, when you're present, people can use you as an excuse. They can say, he's too emotional, he's too demanding, he asks too many questions, he wants too much clarity, and it lets them avoid responsibility. But when you're gone, when your voice is no longer in the room, when your energy is no longer there for them to blame, the truth gets louder. There's no reflection to hide in, no place to redirect the discomfort, no one to take the fall for the things that were inside them all along. And this is where the unraveling begins. They start noticing how your presence once brought calm and how other people bring chaos. They start noticing how you paid attention and how others are careless. They start remembering the way you listened and how others barely hear them. They remember how you understood their emotional storms, while someone new gets frustrated by their reign. Absence doesn't just reveal your value, it reveals their patterns. They don't miss you because they suddenly became mature. They miss you because your absence eliminates the scapegoat. They walked away thinking freedom meant relief, but what they found was emptiness dressed as independence. And folks, emptiness gets heavy fast. This is the point where their mind becomes your echo. They hear your words suddenly making sense. They replay your concerns. They revisit the moments they dismissed. They reread texts with new eyes. They rethink arguments that didn't need to happen. They feel the weight of everything you tried to fix and everything they refused to face. Your absence is no longer silence. It's accountability. But let's talk about what this does to you, because absence isn't just their mirror, it's your classroom. You learn things in the quiet that you couldn't learn when you were trying to hold a connection together by yourself. You discover your strength. You uncover your patterns. You realize you were overgiving. You see where your boundaries were too flexible. You recognize where your heart was too available to someone who wasn't emotionally present. Absence gives both people clarity, but only one of you uses it to grow. Here's where it gets powerful. When they finally feel the full weight of your silence, their ego tries to negotiate with their heart. Their heart says, "You lost someone rare." Their ego says, "We can fix this later." But time doesn't obey their ego. Time supports truth. And the truth is, while they were out there chasing an easier story, you were out here becoming a stronger version of yourself. Your absence didn't break you. It built you. It cleansed you. It sharpened you. It raised your standards. It closed the door on the old version of you they once knew. And this is the part they never saw coming. They thought your silence meant you were waiting. They thought your distance meant you were hurting. They thought your quiet meant you were fading. But what your silence really meant was evolution. By the time they look in the mirror and understand what they lost, they're not looking at the same reflection anymore. And when they come back, and trust me, they do, they won't be coming back to the man they left. They'll be coming back to the man their absence forged. A man who no longer bends, a man who no longer negotiates with disrespect, a man who no longer fears loss, a man who learned to live without them, a man who can choose them but doesn't need them. So, my friend, take a breath. Their absence taught you everything you needed to grow. Your absence taught them everything they needed to regret. This is not weakness. This is balance. This is truth. This is the moment the scales return to fairness. Type "I rise in silence" in the comments to claim this chapter of your evolution. Show yourself. Show them. Show the world around you that your absence wasn't emptiness. It was becoming. And stay with me, because what comes next will shake the ground they stand on. Number 3. When better starts to look strangely familiar. Most people don't actually find better, they just find someone who doesn't know their flaws yet. And my friend, that truth carries more weight than any goodbye they ever gave you, because when they left you, when they walked away, believing they were stepping into something brighter, easier, lighter, they weren't searching for improvement. They were searching for escape from accountability, escape from growth, escape from the emotional mirror you held up to them every time you asked questions they didn't want to answer. They didn't want to evolve. They wanted a reset. And resets feel good at first. Resets always feel like upgrades, until life removes the excitement and exposes the patterns beneath it. Imagine someone who keeps buying new phones, not because the old one is broken, but because they refuse to update the software. Every time the phone glitches, freezes, or lags, they blame the device instead of their refusal to maintain it. Eventually, they buy the newest model and feel superior for a moment. But guess what happens after a few months? The same glitches reappear, the same issues surface, the same frustration returns. Not because the phone is flawed, but because the user is repeating the same habits. That's what your ex did. They convinced themselves you were the glitch, the outdated model, the reason things were breaking down. They believed a new person would be the solution, the upgrade, the answer to the stability they never learned to build within themselves. At first, everything looks perfect. The new connection is shiny, the chemistry is strong, the vibe is exciting. They feel validated in their choice. They feel like they finally escaped everything that made the relationship with you feel heavy. And in their mind, they celebrate this like a victory. They even rewrote history in their head to protect their ego. He was too much. He didn't understand me. He wasn't aligned with who I'm becoming. This new person matches my energy. It sounds mature when they say it. It sounds spiritual, even deep, but when someone labels avoidance as evolution, you can guarantee the universe will correct that misunderstanding later. The new connection feels better simply because the new person hasn't discovered their emotional blind spots yet. They haven't seen the inconsistency, they haven't felt the disconnect, they haven't been exposed to the defensiveness, the shutting down, the shifting blame, or the unwillingness to communicate. They're still in the performance stage, the honeymoon of illusions, where everyone shows their best actor self. But my friend, time is undefeated. Time always removes the costumes. Time always reveals the truth hiding behind the excitement. Time always brings people face to face with who they really are. Slowly, quietly, the new relationship begins to feel less like better and more like déjà vu. Arguments start popping up that sound strangely familiar. The same tone, the same misunderstandings, the same emotional distance, the same frustration they once blamed on you. Suddenly they feel unsettled because they thought leaving you meant leaving those problems. But your absence exposes them. The issues weren't coming from you. They were coming from inside them. They took their wounds with them. They packed their fears into the suitcase. Their lack of accountability followed them into the new home. Their emotional immaturity didn't magically disappear just because they found someone new. Now, the new partner starts asking the same questions you once asked. Why do you shut down when something bothers you? Why do you avoid serious conversations? Why do you pull away the moment things get real? And the moment those questions show up, the illusion of better begins to crack open. They start feeling pressure again, the same pressure they felt with you, the pressure to grow, to communicate, to be honest, to show up, to stop pretending. But they didn't leave you to grow. They left you to avoid growth, and avoidance always catches up. This is when their mind begins to drift back to you, not because they want a redo, not because they suddenly recognize your value in a romantic way, but because comparison is a powerful teacher. They remember how deeply you cared. They remember how patient you were. They remember how you handled conflict, not perfectly, but with heart. They remember how you calmed their storms instead of adding to them. They remember how safe your presence felt. They remember how consistent your love was, and the things they once labeled as too emotional, too intense, or too demanding now start looking a lot like emotional maturity. What the new person calls clarity is actually the same thing you once offered. What the new person finds overwhelming is the same depth they once took for granted. They start to feel the gap between what they thought they were running toward and what they actually landed in, and that gap grows into a quiet ache. But here is the twist: they won't admit it. Oh no, the ego will never allow such humility in the beginning. Instead, they will double down on their decision. They will pretend everything is fine. They may even show off the new connection more loudly, more proudly, more frequently, trying to convince everyone, especially themselves, that they made the right choice. But inside, their mind is not at peace, their spirit is not settled, their hearts are not aligned. They start questioning themselves. They start replaying your last conversations. They start feeling guilt for the way they dismissed you. They start recognizing that the patience, loyalty, love, and emotional availability you offered were not flaws. They were gifts. Gifts they mishandled. Gifts they assumed would always be available. Gifts they believed they could find again easily. But here's the truth you need to hear, my friend. Not everyone gets a second chance to experience depth. Not everyone deserves a second chance. And not everyone understands what they lost until it is far too late to retrieve it. When better begins to look familiar, it means life has placed them in a classroom they didn't choose, but desperately needed. Meanwhile, while their new connection is crumbling under the weight of truth, something entirely different is happening to you. You are growing, you're healing, your heart is learning new patterns, your mind is learning new boundaries. Your self-worth is strengthening in ways it never did before. You are becoming harder to access, harder to manipulate, harder to replace, harder to forget. You are becoming the version of yourself that you always wanted to be, the version they weren't ready for. And that is what truly scares them. Not the new relationship failing, not loneliness, not the consequence. What scares them is the realization that while they were searching for better, you were becoming better. Stronger, sharper, clearer, more self-respecting, more emotionally grounded, more in control of your own story. And here's the painful truth they eventually face. The version of you they return to, if they dare, will not be the version who waited for them. You won't be the man who begged for closure. You won't be the man who broke in their absence. You won't be the man who accepted crumbs. You will be the man their better could never measure up to. You will be the man their own choices forced you to become. You will be the man they never believed you could grow into. And that realization, it shakes them. Deeply, permanently, irreversibly. Take a deep breath, my friend. You're not losing. You never were. Life was simply showing both of you the same truth at different times. You saw it early through pain. They will see it later through regret. Type "I grow beyond illusions" in the comments to claim this chapter of your evolution. What comes next will reveal exactly how life forces them to stand in the very place they once left you standing. Number 4. When life makes them stand where you once stood. Life has a perfect memory, my friend. It doesn't forget the pain you felt. It just waits for the right moment to return the lesson to the one who caused it. There comes a moment in every story like this where the universe quietly rotates the map. The person who walked away from you, who dismissed your feelings, who minimized the depth of what you carried, suddenly finds themselves standing in the very place they once pushed you into. It never happens loudly. There are no alarms, no signs, no warnings. It happens on a random evening in the middle of an ordinary conversation or during a moment of discomfort they didn't anticipate. But when it hits them, it hits with precision. They experience the same uncertainty they once made you live through, the same confusion, the same insecurity, the same ache of emotional imbalance. Life doesn't do this out of cruelty, it does it out of clarity. My friend, imagine a scale that you tried desperately to balance back then. You offered your heart. You asked honest questions. You reached for understanding. But the more you tried to stabilize things, the more they added weight to the other side. Silence, avoidance, inconsistency, half-effort, emotional absence. You lived in the gravity of imbalance while they enjoyed the illusion of being unaffected. Now picture that same scale today. Except this time, you're not on it. They are. They're feeling the tilt, the wobble, the heaviness they once ignored. They are realizing what it's like to stand where you once stood, begging for clarity from someone who has no interest in giving it. It always begins with something small. A shift in tone from the new person, a delay in text responses that used to come instantly, a slight change in energy, a mild sense of being less important than they believed they were. A moment when the new person pulls away, not dramatically, not aggressively, but subtly, in a way that leaves just enough space for insecurity to grow roots. Suddenly, the confidence they walked away with starts cracking. They begin checking their phone with the same anxious heartbeat you once did. They start replaying conversations, wondering if they said something wrong. They start worrying about being replaced by someone else, by distraction, by silence, by uncertainty. The irony, my friend, is almost poetic. The exact behavior they once dismissed in you as overthinking now becomes their own mental soundtrack. They start to understand that the pain you felt wasn't an overreaction. It was intuition. It was emotional intelligence. It was clarity they lacked. You weren't weak, you were aware. But they couldn't see that then because they were too busy running from the emotional responsibility that awareness demands. Now they are the ones sitting in silence, staring at their screen, waiting for a reply that should not take this long. They are the ones wondering why the person they chose over you doesn't treat them with the softness you once gave effortlessly. They are the ones feeling the coldness of inconsistency. They are the ones tasting the bitterness of uncertainty. They are the ones analyzing tone, timing, words, behaviors, trying to decode meaning from nothing. Life has placed them in your old seat, and the discomfort is teaching them what empathy failed to. This is where the cracks in their self-image form. The role they used to proudly play, the emotionally unavailable one, the one who cared less, the one who got the upper hand, the one who was always fine, starts to crumble. Because it's easy to play the role of someone unaffected when you are the one leaving, when you are the one choosing the exit, when you have someone else ready to validate your decision. But when life pushes you onto the receiving end of your own patterns, the mask falls off. The performance becomes impossible to maintain. The truth becomes unavoidable. They begin to question themselves in ways they never did when you were around. They ask, why am I not enough now? Why does this person pull away when I'm finally ready to give? Why does it feel like I'm being punished for choosing wrong? These questions linger in their chest like stones, and for the first time they understand emotionally, deep in their bones, what your questions once felt like. They begin to understand how painful it is when someone you care about does not choose you with the same intensity you chose them. And my friend, this realization is not intellectual, it's experiential. Life is delivering the lesson directly into their nervous system. They feel the sting, they feel the longing, they feel the confusion, they feel the vulnerability, they feel the very pain they once weaponized against you by calling it needy or dramatic. They now learn that wanting clarity is not neediness, wanting consistency is not intensity, wanting emotional presence is not clinginess, it is emotional maturity. This is also the stage where the new person unintentionally becomes the mirror. Without knowing it, they start showing your ex the parts of themselves they avoided. Their fear of commitment, their fear of vulnerability, their habit of shutting down, their resistance to emotional accountability. These traits now stand out harshly because the new person reacts differently than you did. They don't tolerate inconsistencies. They don't excuse bad behavior. They don't stretch themselves to accommodate what you once did out of love. They simply step back. And that step back triggers something deep inside your ex. Fear. Fear of losing what they thought would replace you. Fear of being alone. Fear of confronting themselves. Fear of acknowledging that they might have been the problem all along. This moment, the moment life makes them stand where you once stood, is the moment their illusions collapse. They can no longer blame you. They can no longer justify their behavior. They can no longer pretend that you were the unstable one. They are forced to face the truth, and the truth is simple. You weren't too much. They were too little. They were unprepared for the depth you brought into their life. But here is the most powerful part, my friend. While they are standing in your old place, drowning in realizations, something entirely different is happening to you. You are no longer standing in that role. You have risen above it. You have evolved past it. You have healed in ways they haven't. You gained wisdom and distance and clarity through pain. They are just beginning a journey you already survived. They are feeling emotions you processed months ago. They are learning lessons you've already mastered. In the story of emotional growth, you are chapters ahead. This reversal, where they stand in your old pain while you stand in your new strength, is the universal rebalancing of the emotional equation. It is not revenge. Stoics do not care for revenge. It is not karma as punishment. It is karma as clarity. It is life showing both of you the truth from different angles at different times. It is fairness, disguised as heartbreak at first, but revealed later as liberation. Let this sink in deeply. You are not the person waiting for their apology. You are not the person begging for their acknowledgement. You are not the person hoping they will understand your pain. Life made sure they would understand it without you needing to lift a finger. Their new pain teaches them what your old love could not, and your growth teaches you what their absence could not. Take a slow breath, my friend. You have survived what they are only beginning to feel. You walked through the fire they are only now stepping into. You learned resilience while they learned regret. You learned self-worth while they learned consequence. This is the moment life proves something powerful. You were never weak for feeling deeply. You were ahead. Type, "I stand above my past" in the comments to mark this moment in your evolution. Show yourself, show the world, and stay with me, because what comes next reveals why your absence becomes the one thing they never recover from. Number 5. When your absence becomes their new normal. A person doesn't regret losing you when you leave. They regret losing you when they finally accept you're not coming back. My friend, That realization hits people in ways they never expect, because when someone walks away from you, they don't imagine a world where your presence is no longer reachable. They assume you'll always be a message away, a memory away, a reconciliation away. They assume your heart stays open just because theirs wasn't ready. They assume time will pause for them. They assume you'll remain emotionally available, even while they explore something else. They assume your loyalty will wait for their convenience. But life doesn't operate on their assumptions. It operates on reality. And the reality is this: the longer you stay silent, the longer you stay focused on yourself, the longer you invest in your healing without involving them, the more your absence evolves from a temporary distance into something far more powerful, a new normal they were never prepared to face. A normal where you are no longer emotionally tied to them. A normal where you no longer check on them. A normal where their name no longer shakes you. A normal where your world continues turning even though theirs is slowing down. At first, they treat your absence like a mood. They think you're just upset. They think you're going through a phase. They think you just need time to cool down. They think eventually, like always, you'll soften, you'll reach out, you'll explain yourself, you'll give them the emotional reassurance they once took without reciprocating. In their mind, your silence isn't a change, it's an interruption, something temporary, something harmless, something they can undo whenever they feel like it. But that's where their illusion begins to crack. One day passes, then a week, then a month, and your silence doesn't break. The emotional cord they believed would always be there starts thinning. The access they once had to your heart becomes restricted. The version of you who waited, who hoped, who tolerated, who negotiated your worth just to stay connected, begins to fade. You are no longer living in the emotional house where they left you. You moved out quietly, without announcing it, without slamming the door, without asking them to notice. You simply outgrew the version of yourself who needed them. This is when your absence stops being silence and becomes a presence of its own. It fills the space they never expected it to fill. It becomes a reminder, a weight, a question, a discomfort. They begin noticing the places where you used to show up, and you simply don't anymore. They feel the emptiness in conversations you once carried. They feel the lack of emotional grounding you once provided. They feel the absence of your encouragement, your reassurance, your care, your attention, your melody in the background of their chaos. At first, they try to pretend it doesn't matter. Pride is good at pretending. Ego is good at performing. They scroll past your name and pretend it doesn't sting. They hear something that reminds them of you and pretend the memory doesn't linger. They feel moments of vulnerability and pretend they don't miss the safety you once offered. But silence is a patient teacher. It waits, it grows, it settles, and eventually it becomes undeniable. They start wondering where you went emotionally. They start wondering who you're talking to. They start wondering what you're thinking. They start wondering why your world still seems stable without them. They start noticing that you didn't break the way they expected. You didn't fall apart. You didn't collapse. You didn't orbit their life the way they assumed you would. Instead, you adapted. Your nervous system recalibrated, your heart adjusted to the absence of the person who once occupied so much space inside it, and without even realizing it, your healing became their discomfort. This is when their memory becomes selective. They begin remembering the things they dismissed. They remember how patient you were on their worst days. They remember how deeply you listened. They remember how safe you made them feel without even trying. They remember the softness in your voice when you reassured them. They remember how you handled their emotional storms with calmness they mistook for weakness. They remember how consistent you were. They remember your loyalty. They remember your presence. They remember how you held the relationship together, even when they were pulling away. And now, no one is doing that for them. No one is paying attention at that level. No one is showing up with that kind of steady energy. No one is reading their silence the way you once could. No one is patient enough to understand their moods. No one is available enough to calm their overthinking. No one is invested enough to make them feel chosen. They thought better would fill the space you left, but instead it only highlights how irreplaceable certain energies truly are. And my friend, here's the part that always shakes them. Your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. Because presence can be ignored when taken for granted, absence cannot. Their internal monologue begins to shift from arrogance to uncertainty. Why hasn't he reached out? Why does it feel like he doesn't care anymore? Why does he seem so unaffected? Is he over me? Is he talking to someone new? Was I the one who failed to appreciate what I had? These questions begin as whispers, but slowly grow into thunder. They don't say them out loud. Their pride won't allow it, but their heart won't leave it alone. Their world begins to shrink the way yours once did. Their confidence begins to tremble the way yours once did. Their emotional foundation begins to shake the way yours once did. And the most ironic part? They think losing you is something that just recently happened. They don't realize they lost you back when they chose not to value you. They don't realize the breakup wasn't when you separated. It was when they stopped showing up for the love you were offering. This is also the stage where they start fantasizing about reconciliation. Not because they suddenly know how to love you better, not because they've done the internal work, not because they've magically grown, but because your absence triggers something inside of them that they have avoided their entire life. Fear of emotional accountability. They realize you were the safe space they never acknowledged. They realize they may never find someone who understands them the way you did. They realize the connection they abandoned might have been the connection they needed. They realize regret doesn't announce itself with apologies. It arrives quietly through longing. Meanwhile, your world is expanding. You are learning to live without the emotional chaos they brought. You are discovering new habits, new priorities, new peace, new strength. You are no longer driven by longing. You are driven by alignment. Your life begins to rise in areas that once suffered under the weight of trying to hold someone together. You begin to realize how heavy the relationship was only when the weight is no longer on your shoulders. And here's the most beautiful truth. Your absence isn't punishing them. It's revealing you. It's revealing your worth. It's revealing your emotional maturity. It's revealing the stability you offered. It's revealing the strength you possess. It's revealing the growth they never expected. Because absence isn't just the lack of presence. Absence is transformation. You didn't disappear from their life. You evolved out of the version of their life where they once existed. And that is why your absence becomes their new normal, because they finally realize the old normal wasn't going to return. The old version of you doesn't live here anymore. The door they assumed would always stay open, quietly closed, while they were busy chasing distractions. Not loudly, not angrily, not dramatically. It closed with maturity. It closed with dignity. It closed with self-respect. Take a deep breath, my friend. You didn't lose anything. They did, and life is showing them that every single day. Let this empower you, not inflate you. Let it ground you, not harden you. Let it remind you of your worth, not your wounds. Type, "I no longer wait," in the comments, because your absence didn't break you. It transformed you into someone who refuses to shrink for love ever again. And stay with me, because the next section reveals what happens when their regret finally meets the man you've become, someone they never imagined they'd have to face. Number 6. When regret meets the man you've become. The hardest moment in a person's life isn't realizing they lost you. It's realizing they lost access to the version of you who would have forgiven them. My friend, that single truth is the foundation of this entire chapter, because when regret finally comes for them, and it always does, it doesn't meet the man they walked away from. It doesn't meet the emotional version of you who once begged for clarity. It doesn't meet the wounded, trembling heart who was willing to accept crumbs just to feel chosen. It does not meet the man who carried the relationship, patched the cracks, held the emotional weight, and bent himself into a shape that made them feel comfortable. That version of you is gone, and what replaces him is precisely what shocks them the most. Regret does not show up early. It does not visit them when their life is loud, busy, distracted, full of noise and motion. Regret arrives in silence. It shows up after midnight. It shows up when they're alone in their car with a familiar song playing. It shows up when they scroll through their messages and realize yours is the only name they hesitate on. It shows up when life finally slows down enough for honesty to catch up. And when it does, something shifts in their chest, an ache, a pull, a whisper they can't ignore. That whisper? It's the truth they ran from. But the moment that truly unravels them is when they reach out for the old version of you, only to be met by a stranger, calm, grounded, unmoved, unavailable in the best way. They expect to find the man who would read their message 3 times, who would analyze every emoji, who would reply instantly, who would feel relief just seeing their name appear again. Instead, they find a man who pauses, a man who breathes, a man who thinks, a man who responds, not reacts, a man whose identity is no longer built around their validation. It shakes them, it destabilizes them, it embarrasses them. In their mind, they had you archived, stored away on an emotional shelf, just waiting for them to circle back when life became inconvenient. They assumed your heart was still in the same position they left it. They assumed their absence froze your emotional development. They assumed time made you softer, not stronger. And when they finally return, expecting the same open door, they don't find a door at all. They find a gate, a boundary, a lock. Not out of anger, but out of evolution. Your growth is the one thing their fantasy version of reconciliation never prepared them for. When they left, they thought they were choosing themselves. In reality, they were choosing the version of you who would hurt enough to grow. The breakup created a man they never saw coming. You learned how to sit with your emotions rather than chase distractions. You learned how to silence your overthinking instead of letting it consume you. You learned how to walk alone without feeling lost. You learned how to regulate your heart instead of begging someone else to hold it gently. You learned the art of detachment, not coldness, but clarity. And my friend, nothing intimidates a returning ex more than clarity. Clarity strips them of their old power, power they never earned, only borrowed from your lack of boundaries at the time. Power they misused because they assumed it was infinite. Power they wielded because you didn't yet know you had the right to take it back. Now, when they come back, that power is gone. They find themselves in unfamiliar emotional territory where you are calm, composed, and fully aware of your worth. Your silence unnerves them. Your short replies unsettle them. Your emotional neutrality confuses them. Your maturity exposes their stagnation. And your distance, your beautiful, earned, powerful distance, forces them to feel everything they ran from when you were the one feeling it first. They may try to pretend they just want to check on you, but you and I both know the truth. People don't return to places they've outgrown. They return to places where they left parts of themselves behind. You were the emotional home they abandoned before learning how rare emotional safety truly is. Now they stand outside the house, knocking, hoping the lights inside flicker with recognition. But the man inside is not waiting by the window anymore. He is building a life that does not require their shadow for warmth. They begin crafting messages with care, trying to sound casual but clear enough to test your emotional availability. They look for signs, tiny signs, that you still feel something. They search your tone for softness. They search your pauses for longing. They search your words for cracks. But all they find is a man who hasn't hardened. He is healed. A man who doesn't chase. He chooses. A man who doesn't beg. He evaluates. A man who doesn't collapse. He stands tall. This is when the deepest regret sinks in. Not regret for losing you, but regret for losing the version of themselves they had access to when they had you. They regret the ease with which they dismissed your feelings. They regret the arrogance that convinced them you'd always be around. They regret confusing your loyalty with dependence. They regret mistaking your softness for weakness. They regret every moment they prioritize their ego over your heart. But regret does something interesting. It forces self-awareness. They start seeing themselves clearly for the first time, and that clarity isn't flattering. They see the immaturity, they see the avoidance, they see the selfishness, they see the damage they caused, they see the pattern they kept repeating, they see the good they mishandled, they see the man they became when you needed them to become better. And as they face all of this, a new fear emerges, the fear of realizing that you no longer need them, a fear more piercing than loneliness, a fear more painful than heartbreak, a fear that touches their ego and their soul simultaneously. Have I changed enough to deserve another chance? Do I even know how to love him right? What if he's already done with this chapter? What if he found someone better? What if he's happier without me? What if I'm too late? These questions start to haunt them, not because they suddenly want to be your partner, but because they suddenly want to be someone you could choose again. They're not only chasing reconciliation, they're chasing redemption. But here's the part that elevates you above all of this. You don't need their regret to validate your worth. You don't need their apology to heal your wounds. You don't need their presence to feel whole. Because the greatest transformation wasn't theirs, it was yours. You became the man who can love deeply without losing himself. You became the man who can walk away with dignity instead of desperation. You became the man whose peace cannot be bought with crumbs of affection. You became the man whose boundaries speak louder than his emotions. You became the man who chooses himself first, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. Their regret is simply the echo of your evolution. And here is the most beautiful part of this entire journey. They may come back wanting to rewrite the ending, but you now hold the pen. Because when regret meets the man you've become, it realizes something life-changing. The version of you they abandoned is gone, and the version standing in front of them doesn't settle for anything less than emotional truth. Take a deep breath, my friend. This is your moment of clarity. You didn't just survive the heartbreak, you transformed through it. Thank you for watching.